Hey, good day and welcome back again to our VBA tutorial. And in this video, I'm going to share with you how you can copy a data from another worksheet using VBA. So in this example, we will be using this sample data that I downloaded in Google. The workbook name is Financial Sample. So here, what we're going to do is I have another workbook in here where I'm going to code VBA later. And what that VBA will do is to copy the data from this worksheet. So these are applicable in the process like if you are part of reporting and you are working with different workbook and you want it to all be placed in just one workbook, then I think this will be helpful for you, especially if you want to implement VBA in doing that. So to get started, let me just close this file first and I open a new Excel workbook. And what I'm going to do first is to save this workbook as macro enabled. So I'll do save as and then I'll choose a place where I would like to save this, and I will be using the same folder like on the previous one. And I will name this one um, 002, and this will be VBA copy data from another workbook. It's a long name, I know. You can name it a better one if you want. And again, make sure that it save as type Excel macro enabled or that XLSM file. And then now let's hit save. And don't worry, I will upload this financial sample file and I will provide the link in the description below. So if you want to follow the coding with me, you can start with downloading this file first. Okay, now going back to the macro file that we just created, I will open our VBA editor using the Alt F11 from my keyboard. And this is our VBA environment. Let me just, okay, I think this is enough. Okay, so let's start by creating new module as I recommend on the first video, and we will name this module VBA copy data. I don't want to use a long name in here. And then inside our module we will create our procedure and we will name it do copy data. Alright, so before I started coding in this procedure, I want to make this like a tool. So first, let's rename our worksheet first. I will just name it data. And then I would like to have a button in here and I will place that in our row 1. And what I'd like to happen is that let me place a button first. So let's name this copy data and let's just make it better and let's select a better button format or better looks. Oh, why it's not loading? What's happening? Why it's so low? Okay, maybe this one is better or this one. And then I would like to also have another um, button which I will call clear data. And let's give it a different color. Maybe this one is good. And what I would like to happen is that when I click this copy data button, it will ask me to select a file and then I will choose our sample financial file, which is this, and then all the data from this file should be transferred into this worksheet. Okay, so let's go back to our VBA editor, and here in our procedure, let's start by declaring our workbook, and I will call it this workbook as workbook. And then let's set this workbook equals to our workbook. It's always safe, and I would advise to always use a variable for this workbook, or always use this workbook because when you are working with different Excel file and you did not include this workbook, it might give you an issue because it might get confused on whatever the Excel is active and it's trying to call a function that is not present to that workbook. I'm not sure if you get what I'm saying, but again, just a reminder, always make sure to use the this workbook keyword, or better to use a variable that will represent that this workbook. All right. So now we have the this workbook. The next item that I will declare is our worksheet, which is the data. So let's call that data sh or data sheet, and it should be a worksheet data type. Now let's set that equals to twb because that's our this workbook. You can also write that as this workbook, but we already have a variable for that, so let's just use twb that sheets and then the name of the sheets, which is data. All right, now we have no variable that represent our workbook as well as our worksheet. Now the next thing that we need to do is to create a variable that will represent the workbook and the worksheet that we will copy data from. So let's start with the source workbook as workbook. So this will be where to copy data from. By the way, this green sentence or phrase in here is what we call comment, and you can create comment by using a single quote first, and that will be read as a comment and will be ignored by the program when it runs. Okay, before I can set the workbook, I need to have the path of that workbook first so that I can handle it. So I will declare a path, let's call it SWS path or source path, and this should be a string data type because it will hold the path. And now let's assign a value to our spath. I will call that application that get open file name. All right, so I'm not sure if you know what get open file name means, but maybe it's better if I show you how it works. So I will run it via F8 or debug mode, and now we are on the procedure, and now it goes here, and as you see, when the code goes into that line, it opens this open or select file a window where it gives an option to select a file so that we can identify what is the path of that file. So let's just say, for example, I select that file and hit the open button. Of course, we don't see what happened. So to show you what happened is that make sure to open your immediate window. You can just press Ctrl G from your keyboard, or you can also click this view button in here and then select immediate window. So let's try to print the SPAT so that we will see what's the result after it goes to that line. So let me try to run it again via this button or F5, and now I will choose the file I want to copy data from again and hit open. And if we go back to our immediate window, you will see that our spat value is equals to this. Okay, now that we have an spat, we can now set our source workbook or the workbook where we want to copy data from. So let's say set source workbook is equals to workbooks that open and then the spat. Okay, it's because right now we cannot copy data from another Excel file without opening it. So what we're doing here is that we will open the file we want to copy data from, and this is the code on how to do that. That's why it's important to have the application.getOpenFileName first for you to identify the path. If you have a static path, you may no longer be needing it, but I would still suggest that you use this. You know, it's also a good practice. It will be useful someday as well if you are creating other tools. Anyway, so much talking. Let's go back in here. Now let's see what will happen after I run this. So right now, as you can see, I don't have other workbook open in here. I just only have this tool that we are currently working on. And now I will try to run this and let's see what will happen after I select the financial file and so running. And now you can see that it opens another workbook, which is our financial sample file. Now we have two workbooks open after this line. And the next thing that we need to do is is to identify or declare another variable that will represent the worksheet where we want to copy data from. So let's start creating a new variable. Let's name it finance sh or finance sheet as worksheet. And then let's set finance sh is equals to swb because that's coming from the source workbook. That's the difference between twb and the swb. Oops. And then let's say that sheets, and of course the name of the sheets in here, which is finance. And there we have all the variable that we need in order to do our goal. Okay, now that we have all of the variable that we need, um, let's say for example that this data is getting dynamic rows, meaning that if you will look at this one, the last row is 701. But let's assume, for example, that this data could be more than that, or this data could be lesser than that. So we want to make our code flexible so that we don't always need to change it every time you want to run it. So what we are going to do next is to get the last row of this file so that we know how many data or how many row we should copy before we start copying it. Okay, and to do that, it's the same approach that we did in the previous video. So we will be needing a variable that will represent the last row of this file or of this worksheet. So let's create a variable. Let's name it finance last row as long. So don't use integer. I would recommend long, especially when you're dealing with a large amount of data. So to set that last row, let's say finance last row. And if you are using a long variable, you can just type some part of the variable, and by pressing Control space from your keyboard, it's like an IntelliSense where you will see a list of variables and functions that will matches the start string that you type in. So in this case, it should be finance last row, and then it should be equals to finance worksheet because that's the worksheet that we want to know what the last row is, and then it will be followed by that range and the column that we want to reference, and in this case I think best one is A for column A, and then followed by rows that count, that end, that XLAP, that row. And again, what it does is to get the last value of the specified, or to get the last row with value of the specified column, which in this case is A. So it should provide 701 in this code. All right, now that we have the last row, we can now start copying data. Okay, maybe I should provide a comment in here because since I've already shared to you what comments is earlier. So get the last row of the target data, and then here we say declare this workbook for the tool you're currently working on, and then declare the workbook, declare the worksheet of the tool workbook. I'm not sure what I'm saying there. And then here declare the target workbook where to copy data from. And here we also declare the worksheet, but let me not put any comments in there anymore. So now let's start copying data. So let's say, hmm, I think it would be better if we activate the worksheet first. So maybe for example, you will be having multiple worksheets in here. So it is safe or better to activate the target sheet first. And to do that, we can just simply type in that activate. And then after that, we can start copying data. So we just need to first identify what the range is. So in this case, it should be A1 to P and the last row. So to do that, let's say finance sh that range A1 to P because that's the last column, and then concatenate it with the finance last row. So it's now flexible uh, depending on the number of rows that we have on the data. And let's say that copy, all right? And then after that, we should go back to our code in here. So here, we need to identify where we should paste the data that we just copy. So we need to start with activating the worksheet first. So let's say, what's the name of the sheet? Oh, it's data sh that activate. Oops, what I'm doing. And then after that, let's identify the cell where we want to paste the data. So in this case, it should be A2. So let's say data sh dot range A2 dot paste. Is that paste special? Okay, let me try. I'm not sure, but let me try. And what we want to happen after we paste the data is we want to close the finance sample workbook. And to do that, we just only need to simply type in. Okay, let's put a comment first. So let's say swb dot close, and then we can say false. So we don't want to save any changes when closing that file. And now let's try this before we do anything else. Let me run this data now, and it will ask us to select our file. Now let's hit open, hit copy, and there's a message box again. Let me just hit no for now. And you can see here that we have the data copied from the source file going to our workbook. Okay, so if you remember, there was a pop-up again on the finance sample file when it was closed by VBA. It's because it's like the data copied from the clipboard is still active. So what we need to do is we need to deactivate that or disable that. And to do that, what we can do is before we close the workbook, let's clear the clipboard first. And to do that in VBA, we just need to type in application that um, cat copy mode is equals to false. And now let me also map this code into our button. So let's say assign macro. Again, right click on the button first. Let me cancel this. If you want to assign a macro to a button, you need to right click on it first. When I say button, it's the Excel shape, so you don't get confused on that. Let's say assign macro, and then let's select the procedure, and we only have one here. Let's hit OK. Now let's try to copy the data again from this file, hit open, and it opens the file, copy the data, and then close it. And now you don't see any pop-up anymore, meaning that it was closed successfully without any last message from that file. Alright, I think one thing you notice is that I did not delete the data before I copy a new one. So that will be the purpose of our next button here, which is the clear data. So let's create a procedure for that. But before that, we want to select the range first that will be deleted once we click this button. So let's select A2 until maybe say just to be safe. So if you add more data, then you don't need to change this range anymore. So select the first row first, and then from your keyboard, um, I'm getting lost saying few words. Okay, from your keyboard, press Control Shift and then arrow down again until it select the last row of Excel. And once you have that range selected, um, make sure that your formula bar is enabled. And then from here, replace this with, let's name it clear data. So that's a name range. I call that a name range. So if you see once I select that clear data in here, you will see that there is a range getting selected. And if you want to know how many range name you have, you can just go to formulas and then name manager, and you will see here that we have a clear data, and you will see the range of that clear data as well. All right, now let's go back to our VBA editor. And here we're going to create a function or a procedure again. And this time let's call it do clear data. And then let's say I'll not create a variable anymore. I'll do it in just one line. This this workbook that sheds um, data that range. Did I name it clear data? That clear. Okay, so there are different way to clear data from the worksheet. One is clear and then the other one is that clear contents. And I will explain to you what's the difference between these two. So let's start with clear first. So let's map the code first to this button. So again, just right click on the shape, assign macro, and then do clear data. Make sure to select the correct procedure. Hit OK. And now I will click it and boom, we have just cleared the data. All right, so the clear the clear command or the clear functions remove everything on the specified range. So when I say everything, it includes the formatting, the colors, if you put something. That's why you can see here that the table is totally gone or totally deleted. Now let's try to put clear contents as well so that you will see the difference. Right. So now let me copy the data again from finance sample. Hit open, wait for it to be copied, and you see everything was copied again. And if you will look into this table, you will see there is a formatting because this table header has some colors. There's also filtering in there. Now I will try to clear data, and again we're using the dot clear contents in here and observe what will happen. So I'll just click it and okay, clear contents seems like because it's part of the table, it's also deleted even the color of it. But let me show you this way just to ensure that you understand what's the difference between clear contents and clear. So let me try to put here some values. And then I will also put some colors in here. So when I press clear data, it's using that clear. You will notice that it was not able to delete the color because the purpose of it is only to delete the value of the cell. But now let me try to put some values again on this range. And then I will change the code into that clear. And now I will press the button again and observe that everything was gone, including the color. And if you also have a formatting in there. Alright, so now we have everything completed and we were able to copy data from another workbook. So that's only a basic way of copying data from the workbook. And in the next example, what I would like to happen is that, okay, I'm just waiting for the file to be open. So on our next video, what we're going to do is to copy only selected column from this worksheet. So let's say, for example, you just only want to copy segment, country, and then sales price, or country, product, and then profit comments or columns. So how we're going to do that? Well, please stay tuned and we'll do that on the next video. Alright, so I hope that you learned something from this video again, and I hope you should be able to use something from this tool for your work, or maybe on your project, or you want to explore more about VBA. And if you have any question or concern related to VBA, please make sure to put that in the description of this video. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit just that like button. So again, thank you again for watching and see you on the next one.